Got a bunch of Sony news for you today. The new PS5 firmware update is bringing some welcome changes. Teardown YouTuber Austin Evans got their hands on one of those new lighter PS5 models that started appearing on shelves in Australia. And lastly, there's been a bit of back and forth between Xbox boss Phil Spencer and PlayStation boss Jim Ryan. So without further ado, let's get into some video game news. First up, and as you might remember, a couple of weeks ago, we heard reports of a new PlayStation model hitting shelves in Australia that's significantly lighter than the launch model of the PS5. Overall, about 300 grams lighter, or a little over half a pound if you prefer. The discless version is about 200 grams lighter, so just barely half a pound. Compared to the launch PS5, these new models are 600 and 500 grams lighter, respectively, so that's about an entire pound lighter. So what gives? Well, YouTuber Austin Evans got a hold of his very own CFI-1200 and did a teardown video which explains exactly why the new model is lighter. If you remember, Austin Evans did a teardown before when the PS5 heatsink was updated in 2021, which sparked a bit of controversy over which model would be more at risk for overheating and overall just performing worse. In the breakdown for the latest model, Austin and friends discovered the heatsink has been scaled down once again, but now there's a heat pipe to help disperse heat as well as a smaller motherboard. These smaller components make up a lot of the weight loss and would make the machine even lighter if it wasn't for some extra plastic added to the inside of the case for extra support. One setback to the redesign is that it will be harder for end users to replace their CMOS battery if they ever needed to, as now it's getting covered up completely by the updated heatsink. Maybe not the biggest deal for most, but if you remember, there is a pretty nasty flaw with the PS4 and its CMOS battery that will eventually break older versions of the PS4 if not replaced. As for the performance of the new CFI-1200 model, it's just about as noisy as the previous models, but runs slightly cooler with way better heat distribution and draws significantly less power. The 2021 PS5 was drawing about 229 watts compared to the newer model, which was only pulling about 201 watts. In short, this new PS5 model is lighter, runs cooler, draws less power, and so far seems to run just fine. Currently, it's only available in Australia, but soon this newer model will begin replacing the older ones across the globe. These types of changes are often made to streamline production and help save costs on manufacturing and shipping, and that's likely the case here. But these price-saving updates also do come on the back of Sony announcing that they're increasing the base price of the PS5 by about $50 everywhere in the world, I guess, except the US, so we got lucky. In additional PlayStation news, the latest firmware update for the PS5 is bringing some welcome changes to the console's operating system. Most notably, update version 22.02-06 is bringing 1440p support, game lists, and folders. In addition, you can now join a friend's game directly from a notification that they're playing. If someone sends you a message, you can view their profile before responding. It's also now easier to compare 3D audio to stereo audio, and apparently you can now search for YouTube videos from anywhere on your PS5 using voice commands. Whoever updates their PS5 right now and navigates to an inside gaming video with just their voice gets brownie points. Also, shout outs to anybody who's watching this on a PS5 right now, or an Xbox, or anything really. Just thanks for watching. Lastly, included in the new firmware is a stability update for the PS5's DualSense controller. Finally, to round things out, there's some executive level beef going on between CEO of Microsoft Gaming, Phil Spencer, and Sony Interactive Entertainment president, Jim Ryan. As you likely well know by now, Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. As you also might know, Sony has had some objections. Mainly the possibility of losing the entire Call of Duty franchise to Xbox, who could potentially make it an exclusive title. In January, when the acquisition was announced, Phil Spencer said Xbox would honor all pre-existing contracts for the next 3 Call of Duty games. So since one is getting skipped next year, that takes PlayStation to at least 2024. Microsoft has continued to say publicly that they don't plan to remove Call of Duty from the PlayStation ecosystem. Fast forward to last week, where Phil Spencer further elaborated on the details of an additional deal offered to Sony. Spencer told The Verge, "In January, we provided a signed agreement to Sony to guarantee Call of Duty on PlayStation with feature and content parity for at least several more years beyond the current Sony contract. an offer that goes well beyond typical gaming industry agreements. Apparently, that deal wasn't agreeable to Sony. Earlier today, Jim Ryan snapped back telling GamesIndustry.biz, "I hadn't intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion, but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum." Ryan continued, "Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, their proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact on our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines this principle." It's kind of hard to parse exactly what Jim Ryan means here, but apparently there's some part of the deal, despite content parity, that affected how or when Call of Duty content would be experienced on PlayStation consoles in relation to Xbox, and that was a deal breaker. 3 additional years certainly sounds like a lot less than several, as Spencer quoted, and it's not hard to imagine what could happen after Activision's acquisition closes and those 3 additional years are up. On the other hand, PlayStation isn't exactly a stranger when it comes to locking up exclusives. Brian will likely have more on this in the roundup, which drops Saturday mornings at 9:30 a.m., so be sure to tune into that. But that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about these PlayStation 5 hardware revisions, and if you think these kind of yearly stealth revisions are indicating that we might get a PS5 Slim or Pro sometime in the near future. All right, thank you so much again for watching. For more video game news and updates, stay tuned right here to Inside Gaming.